Remember that the sudden flash of red and blue in your rear-view mirror triggers an evolutionary response designed for survival, not necessarily for complex legal navigation. As the April sun begins to set later in the evening, and the spring air carries the scent of fresh rain and blooming greenery, more drivers find themselves pulled over during these transitional months when road activity naturally increases. The physiological reaction, the pounding chest, the sweaty palms, and the sudden tunnel vision is a biological certainty, but it does not have to dictate your behavior. To think clearly, you must consciously counteract this fight-or-flight mechanism by focusing on your breathing and acknowledging that the environment of a traffic stop is often intentionally designed to be intimidating to ensure the officer's safety and maintain their control over the scene. When you see those lights, your first priority is to find a safe place to pull over, signaling early to show the officer you are complying and looking for a spot that doesn't put either of you in danger from passing traffic. This initial act of predictable calm behavior sets the tone for the entire encounter, signaling that you are a rational and cooperative driver rather than a source of chaos. As the seasons change and we move away from the tax deadlines and into the planning stages of summer vacations, the mental clutter of daily life can make a traffic stop feel like an overwhelming burden. However, the key to staying calm is to treat the interaction as a professional transaction. You are not there to win an argument or to plead your case on the side of a busy highway. You are there to facilitate a standard procedure. When the officer approaches the vehicle, they are often scanning for movements that suggest nervousness or a desire to conceal something, so your stillness is your greatest asset. By keeping your hands at the 10 and 2 positions on the steering wheel and avoiding sudden reaches for the glove box or center console before being asked, you are de-escalating the situation through non-verbal communication. This level of preparation allows your brain to shift from a state of panic to a state of observation. You need your observational skills sharp because the phrases an officer uses, such as "we just need to clear a few things up," are often designed to encourage you to waive your protections in exchange for a perceived sense of cooperation. Understanding that these words are a tactical choice rather than a friendly invitation is the first step in moving from a position of vulnerability to one of informed composure. The phrase, "we just need to clear this up," sounds helpful, almost neighborly, as if the officer is offering you a shortcut to resolve a misunderstanding so you can get back to your day. In reality, this is frequently the point where a simple traffic stop for a minor infraction can transform into a broader investigation. When you are sitting in the driver's seat, perhaps with the windows down to enjoy the cool April breeze, it is easy to fall into the trap of wanting to be likable and helpful to speed the process along. You might feel a desperate urge to explain away a minor mistake or provide context that you think will earn you a warning. However, the legal reality is that anything you say in an attempt to clear things up can be documented and used as evidence, often in ways you didn't intend. Thinking clearly means recognizing that you do not have the same goals as the officer in that moment. Their goal is to gather information and ensure public safety. Your goal is to protect your interests and remain safe. By anticipating this specific conversational turn, you can prepare a mental script that allows you to remain polite without becoming an unintended witness against yourself. This isn't about being difficult or obstructive. It's about understanding the high-level concepts of your rights and realizing that silence or a focused response is often the most educational tool you have at your disposal. Maintaining this mindset requires a level of discipline that is hard to summon when your adrenaline is high. This is why practicing your stop routine before you ever need it is so valuable. Imagine the scenario as a series of steps. Signal, pull over, roll down the window slightly, turn off the engine, and place your hands on the wheel. By turning these actions into a habitual script, You free up your cognitive resources to listen carefully to what is being asked and to decide how to respond. You are essentially creating a buffer between the officer's questions and your answers. This buffer is where your power resides. When you hear the officer initiate a line of questioning that goes beyond the scope of the initial stop, your nervous system will want to jump in and fill the silence with explanations. Resist that urge. Remind yourself that the side of the road is not a courtroom, and it is certainly not a place where complex legal issues are actually cleared up to your benefit. The patient-instructor mindset you adopt for yourself will help you see the interaction for what it is, a structured encounter where your words have weight. By staying grounded, observing the environment, and refusing to let the pressure of the moment dictate your speech, you ensure that you are the one in control of your own narrative from the very start of the encounter. Once the officer reaches your window, the interaction moves from a visual assessment to a verbal and physical exchange. And this is the moment where your physical preparation pays off. You should have your window lowered enough to communicate clearly and pass documents through, but you do not necessarily need to have it wide open if you feel the need to maintain a boundary. At this stage, the officer will almost certainly ask for your driver's license, vehicle registration, and proof of insurance. It is a common misconception that you can refuse this initial request without consequence. In virtually every jurisdiction, providing identification and proof of the right to operate the vehicle is a mandatory part of a lawful traffic stop. However, the way you provide these documents is just as important as the act of providing them. Instead of lunging for the glove box or your pocket the moment you see the officer approaching, you should wait until they have made the specific request. A polite and calm response such as, "Yes, officer, my registration is in the glove box. May I reach for it now?" serves two critical purposes. First, it informs the officer of your intent, which prevents a sudden movement from being misinterpreted as a threat. Second, it establishes that you are a rational, cooperative individual who respects the procedural nature of the stop. This is de-escalation in its purest form. You are removing the element of surprise from the encounter and replacing it with predictable professional behavior. As you hand over your paperwork, keep your movements slow and deliberate. Avoid the temptation to narrate your entire day or explain why you might have been speeding or why a tail light is out. At this phase, your language should be professional, respectful, and economical. Using titles like officer or responding with yes and no isn't about being subservient. It is about maintaining a professional distance that keeps the interaction focused on the objective task at hand. Many drivers make the mistake of thinking that being overly friendly or chatty will lead to a warning, but often, extra talking simply provides the officer with more time to observe you for signs of impairment or to look for inconsistencies in a story you weren't even required to tell. If the officer asks a leading question like, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" a simple and polite "No, officer," or "I'm not sure, officer," is often the most prudent response. This prevents you from inadvertently admitting to a violation before the officer has even stated their reason for the stop. Remember, the goal of this phase is to complete the identification process as safely and quickly as possible. By keeping your hands visible, ideally still on the steering wheel when not handling documents, you provide the officer with a sense of security that allows them to remain calm as well. If it is dark outside, turning on your interior overhead light before the officer reaches the door is a powerful de-escalation tool, as it illuminates the cabin and shows you have nothing to hide, which can significantly lower the tension of the approach. Throughout this exchange, your tone should remain even and steady. Even if you feel the stop is unjustified, or if the officer's tone is firm, responding with your own aggression rarely leads to a positive outcome on the roadside. The time to challenge the validity of the stop or the officer's conduct is later, in a controlled environment like a courtroom or with your legal counsel, not while you are sitting in your car in a vulnerable position. By treating the document exchange as a formal bureaucratic process, you signal that you are an informed driver who understands the rules of the road and the expectations of a stop. This professional demeanor often discourages the officer from attempting to lead the conversation into more invasive territory, as you are not presenting as a person who is easily rattled or prone to oversharing. The window is your primary interface with the legal system in this moment. Keep that interface clean, respectful, and limited to the necessary exchanges of information. Once the documents are in the officer's hands and they head back to their patrol car to run your information, you have successfully navigated the most high-tension part of the initial contact. Use this brief pause to take a few deep breaths, refocus your mind, and prepare for the next phase of the interaction, which is where the officer may return and attempt to transition from a simple traffic matter into a broader inquiry by using that pivotal phrase about needing to clear things up. When the officer returns from their patrol vehicle, you might expect them to simply hand back your documents and send you on your way. But this is frequently where the encounter shifts from an administrative traffic matter into an investigative phase. You may notice they are still holding your driver's license and registration as they begin to ask seemingly casual questions about where you are coming from, where you are headed, or what you have been doing today. It is important to understand that these questions are often part of what is known colloquially as a fishing expedition, designed to gather enough information to justify a more intrusive search or a longer detention. While you might feel a social pressure to be chatty and informative, especially if you have been sitting there in the quiet of a spring afternoon, you should realize that you are generally not legally required to answer questions about your itinerary or your personal business. A polite way to handle this is to ask, "Officer, am I free to go?" or to simply state that you prefer not to discuss your personal plans. The most significant pivot occurs when an officer says something like, "Since we are already here, we just need to clear a few things up. You don't mind if I take a quick look in the vehicle, do you?" This is a direct request for your consent to search your car. It is a high-level legal concept that consent must be given voluntarily, and if you say yes, you are effectively waiving your constitutional protections against unreasonable searches and seizures. Many drivers feel that saying no makes them look guilty, but in reality, refusing a search is a standard exercise of your rights and cannot by itself be used as a legal justification to search you. You can remain perfectly respectful while saying, "I don't consent to searches, officer." You do not need to give a reason or an excuse. The refusal is your right. However, you must also be aware of the plain view doctrine. If an officer sees something incriminating through your window or sitting on your passenger seat, like an open container, a weapon, or illicit substances, they may no longer need your consent to proceed. This is why keeping your vehicle tidy and avoiding leaving items in plain sight is a practical way to maintain your privacy. Furthermore, you should understand that the laws governing these interactions can vary significantly from one state to another. In some jurisdictions, the mere smell of a particular substance might give an officer the legal authority to search your vehicle without your permission, while in others, the law has shifted to be much more restrictive. Similarly, the rules regarding how long an officer can make you wait for a canine unit to arrive vary. Current High Court interpretations suggest that an officer cannot unnecessarily prolong a traffic stop just to wait for a drug-sniffing dog if the original reason for the stop, such as a broken taillight, has already been addressed. Because these rules are a patchwork across the country, your safest course of action is to never voluntarily expand the scope of the stop yourself. If the officer continues to press you to clear things up by looking through your trunk or your bags, recognize that this is a tactical move to bypass the need for a warrant or probable cause. They are looking for a shortcut, and your consent is that shortcut. Even if you are certain there is nothing illegal in your car, consenting to a search can lead to unexpected complications, such as the discovery of an item left behind by a previous passenger or a misunderstanding of a perfectly legal object. By firmly but politely declining, you ensure that the officer must meet a higher legal standard to proceed. This isn't about being difficult. It is about being a participant in the legal process, who understands that your vehicle is a private space. If the officer proceeds to search despite your refusal, do not physically interfere or become combative. Simply state clearly, "I do not consent to this search," so that any recording device or witness can document your lack of permission. This preserves your ability to challenge the search later in a legal setting, where the specific facts and local laws can be properly reviewed by experts. Remember, the roadside is for safety and basic compliance. The detailed investigation of your private property is a separate matter entirely that should require more than just a casual conversation about clearing things up. Stay focused on the fact that your cooperation with the basic requirements of the stop does not obligate you to assist in an investigation against your own interests. There are moments during a traffic stop where the air seems to thin and the pressure to speak becomes almost unbearable. This is the escalation edge, that critical point where the officer's questioning becomes more pointed or accusatory, moving away from the initial traffic violation and toward a potential criminal investigation. You might feel a profound sense of injustice or a desperate need to explain yourself when you sense the officer is doubting your honesty. However, this is precisely when the principle of silence becomes your most effective tool. In the American legal system, the high-level concept is that you are not required to provide the evidence used against you. When an officer doubles down on the idea that they just need to clear things up, they are often inviting you to provide a statement that could be used to establish probable cause for an arrest. Staying safe and factual in these moments means recognizing that your verbal participation has reached its logical and legal limit. You can politely and firmly state, "I am choosing to remain silent and I would like to speak with an attorney before answering any more questions." This isn't a sign of guilt. It is the invocation of a fundamental protection designed to prevent people from being pressured into making incriminating statements under duress. Once you have made this statement, you should actually remain silent. It is a common mistake to invoke the right to silence and then immediately start talking again to fill the awkward void. That silence is a professional boundary. It signals that the roadside conversation has concluded and that any further inquiry should happen in a more formal setting with legal representation present. This boundary is especially crucial if the situation escalates to the point where you are being ordered out of the vehicle or placed in handcuffs. At this stage, your physical safety is the absolute priority. Do not resist, do not argue, and do not make sudden movements. Even if you believe the arrest or detention is entirely unlawful, the street corner is not the venue to litigate that fact. Your compliance with physical orders, combined with your refusal to provide a statement, creates a clear, factual record that your attorney can work with later. The goal is to remain a calm observer of your own situation. Note the officer's tone, the questions being asked, and the sequence of events, without reacting emotionally. This factual mindset helps you stay grounded when the officer might use various psychological tactics to get you to talk, such as telling you that only guilty people need lawyers, or that it will be much worse for you if the police have to do this the hard way. Recognize these for what they are, standard investigative techniques. They are not legal promises, and they are not personal attacks. By refusing to engage with the provocation, you prevent the situation from escalating into a physical confrontation or a more serious charge of obstruction. Staying factual also means being honest about what you are doing. If you are reaching for a phone to record the interaction, state that clearly. "Officer, for my own records, I am placing my phone on the dashboard to record this encounter." Most importantly, understand that the presence of counsel is not just for the courtroom. It is a principle that ensures you have a qualified advocate to navigate the complexities of the law that a layperson cannot be expected to know in the heat of a traffic stop. By choosing silence and counsel, you are not obstructing the officer's work. You are simply opting into a more structured, balanced legal process. This approach preserves your dignity and your future options, ensuring that a simple drive doesn't turn into a life-altering legal entanglement because of a few poorly chosen words spoken in a moment of high stress. When you prioritize the fact that you are an individual with protected interests, you can weather the most intense moments of a stop with a level of composure that serves you well long after the red and blue lights have faded from view. Once the patrol car has pulled away and you have been released from the scene, the interaction is not truly over. The documentation phase begins immediately. It is vital that you find a safe, quiet place to stop, such as a nearby parking lot or a side street, while the details of the encounter are still vivid in your mind. The human memory is surprisingly fragile under stress, and the nuances of what was said and done can begin to fade or become distorted within minutes. This is the time to adopt a documentation mindset, treating the experience as if you are a neutral reporter covering an event. If you have a dashcam or a mobile phone recording, ensure that the file is saved and backed up immediately. Beyond the digital evidence, you should write down or record a voice memo detailing every specific fact you can recall. Note the exact time and location of the stop, the weather conditions, and the traffic flow at the moment you were pulled over. If the officer provided a name and badge number, record those precisely, along with the patrol vehicle's number and the agency they represent, whether it was state police, a county sheriff, or local municipal officers. Describe the sequence of the conversation as accurately as possible, specifically focusing on the moment the officer moved from the initial reason for the stop to broader questions. If they used the phrase, "We just need to clear this up," note exactly when that occurred and how you responded. Did you consent to a search? Did you invoke your right to remain silent? Did the officer explain why they were asking specific questions? These details are the building blocks that a legal professional will need to evaluate the constitutionality of the stop and the subsequent investigation. This meticulous record-keeping serves as a safeguard against the conflicting accounts that often arise in traffic court cases. When you have a contemporaneous record of the event, you are in a much stronger position to provide your legal counsel with the information they need to protect your rights. You should also take photographs of anything relevant, such as an obscured speed limit sign, a malfunctioning light on your vehicle that you have since checked, or the physical environment where the stop occurred. This proactive approach transitions you from a passive participant in a stressful event to an active advocate for your own legal well-being. However, as you process this information and consider your next steps, it is imperative to remember the context of the guidance provided here. This discussion is intended solely for general educational purposes and to provide a high-level conceptual framework for understanding driver rights and officer interactions in the United States. It is not and should never be construed as personalized legal advice tailored to your specific situation. The laws governing traffic stops, searches, seizures, and driver obligations are incredibly complex and vary significantly from one state to another, and even between different local jurisdictions. What is legally permissible in one state may be strictly prohibited in another, and judicial interpretations of these laws are constantly evolving through new court rulings. Furthermore, your interaction with this content does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and the author. Every legal situation is unique, and the outcome often depends on specific facts that can only be properly analyzed by a licensed professional who is familiar with the laws of your particular area. If you find yourself facing legal consequences following a traffic stop, or if you believe your rights were violated during an encounter with law enforcement, you should seek the counsel of a qualified attorney in your jurisdiction as soon as possible. Only a lawyer who has reviewed the specific evidence of your case and who understands the local legal landscape can provide the definitive guidance you need to navigate the system effectively. By combining an informed understanding of general principles with the specific expertise of a local legal professional, you ensure that you are taking the most responsible and effective path toward resolving your legal matters and protecting your future on the road. Navigating the legal system requires more than just a set of general rules. It requires a commitment to factual accuracy and professional support.